You're listening to Adventures in Project Management with John Goad.
Hey everybody, hope you're doing well today. I am here to talk about perception. Is it as bad as we think? Well, I don't know. But our perceptions are not always reality. So is that a bad thing? Well, we're not always immune from misperception. So all of us can have a misperception of what reality is. And misperception can yield terrible results for a project or relationships or negotiations. If we're not realistic about reality, that can cause us real trouble. So here's a couple of examples. I did a little research and selection bias. So when we limit how we collect our samples in order to make a determination or formulate an opinion, we can exhibit selection bias, meaning we only sample from a biased group. And how does this work? So our last president, let's take that, Trump. There are two camps of people: those who despise him and everything he's about, and those who love him and everything is about. And there's a lot of people in the middle too. But just for the example, there's two different groups, and they are both considered as being well informed. They both cite certain sources for news and information, and yet, what's the reality? You know, so I think there's certain media groups and certainly social media that forms or pushes a certain narrative in order to sway people in their opinions. And so when you have a limited group that you sample, that you take your information from, you can oftentimes have a misperception of reality. Okay. Another one, there was a study of 650 smokers recently to ask them their perception or their feeling about low nicotine cigarettes. And the fact that low nicotine cigarettes has a lower overall propensity to cause lung cancer. And so out of 650, a majority of these smokers believed that by partaking in low nicotine product, that they would limit their potential to contract lung cancer. Well, there are other studies that show that low nicotine doesn't necessarily contribute to less lung cancer, or something about smoke in the lungs anyway. I don't know. But the bottom line is that there are certain advertisements, and again on social media, that that lend this belief, or lend this narrative, if you will, to some of these smokers that, hey, if you use this product, you'll be able to forego, getting sick with lung cancer or whatever. So again, a sampling bias. Where are you getting your information? Where are these smokers getting their information? So why does this happen? Why do we just hear what we want to hear? I mean, I do it. I do it all the time. Ask my kids. They tell you, Dad, you only hear what you want to hear. Well, sometimes I do. That's called a filter, but that's not what I'm talking about today. In 2019, Psychology Today wrote an article on about motivational perception, or motivated perception. And they said our perception can certainly be biased, it can be selective, and it can be malleable. So in this study, it illustrated that biases in the subject's perceptual judgments aligned with their motivations and wishes, meaning they believed to see or hear what benefited them or what aligned with what they wanted to happen, an outcome that they wanted to happen, or something like that. And I thought, okay, I can see that. I can see that in my life. I can see it in my work with my business. I can see how that could happen, and that could be dangerous, or maybe there's some positive to that as well. So let's explore. So some years ago, I think it was about 20 years ago, there was a movie called Shallow Hal, and it had Jack Black in it and Gwyneth Paltrow, And I think the gist of it, it's been like years ago since I had seen this thing. I think Hal was kind of a nice guy, mid-20s guy, working guy, and he wanted to meet the perfect woman. And so it showed him in, various scenes with his friends seeking out the perfect woman. And the the criteria for the perfect woman, in his opinion at that time, was to have one with the perfect body, or, that looked the best to him on the exterior. And so, it kind of takes through a series of shots on how, how that was unfolding. And I don't remember the trigger, or what changed, or what helped him to flip his perception. But at some point, he saw a woman that was just amazing to him. And in his eyes, she was incredibly beautiful, I believe because of her inner beauty. And he completely negated any acknowledgement of her external features or body type or size or anything like that. And it was, his friends were appalled and all of this, as he just was madly in love with this woman that didn't hit the previous stereotype or whatnot that he and his buddies were looking for. And overall, it's a good story because it focuses on his seeing the inner beauty manifest itself into whole beauty. And I think in relationships that's incredibly important. But it also showed how his perception certainly changed what he saw as reality. And so, so again, my point is that our perception is not always reality. So I know I've talked about before that I always like to think the best of someone or a situation, if at all possible. Do I do it perfect every time? Heck no. I've got a lot of work to do still. But it's taking a positive mindset and working to think the best of a situation or a person. It'll impact my ability to make decisions or negotiate or enter into agreements or things along those lines if I choose to be positive, to have a positive perception, a positive outlook, a positive mindset on those that I'm interacting with. Okay. So, and that becomes my reality, I guess. So let's say I had a grouchy client, maybe hard to please, in a bad mood. This has never happened. Oh, come on. Yes. So recently, I had a project that over the course of, it was a compressed schedule to build a building. It was a compressed schedule, and everybody was working really hard. And it became evident very early in the process of design. So we had a contractor, architect, and consultants. I was the owner's representative, and then the client. It became evident to everybody that this thing was kind of growing out of the realm of the client's budget. And so fortunately, we had a good team that had done their diligence and knew their numbers and were working well together. And they had compiled a kind of interim estimate so that we could, sit down with the client and say, listen, this thing, we need to trim back. This thing is really getting beyond what you've conveyed to us, your funding level. And so it was kind of, approached in a couple of project, we were having project phone call / meetings, that kind of thing. But it became evident that we needed to sit down with the client, face to face and say, listen, this is what's happening. And so we had the meeting, and I knew the meeting was going to be a big deal because this particular client was particular and wanted what they wanted. And it was kind of one of those, leave it up to my team to figure out the details of, cost and stuff. This is what I want, and you need to make it happen. Well, that's never a good situation anyway, because that is not reality, my friend. So we sat down, and, it was kind of interesting just to watch. I'm a body language, I study body language. I have for my entire career, and even before that, when I was a kid. But it was interesting to kind of see where everybody sits, at a table. I always kind of pay attention to that. So I had the client on kind of one end, and then the architect kind of in the middle, and then the contractor at the other end. And so and then I was, opposing, on the opposite side of the architect, but it was kind of clear that, the two competitors, the two groups that were going to be dueling, that's just innately, where everybody sat, but it was kind of a precursor to what was going to occur. So the conversation started, the client just said, hey, I understand that this, is growing out of control, cost-wise. You said you could build something, similar to what I wanted, a couple months ago for this amount of money, but now it's this huge amount of money, and why? And you're wrong. And, the contractor went through a long list of their entire process and how they arrived at these costs and how they were market driven, meaning that subcontractors actively participating in the market at the time were all feeding costs to them so that they could establish this budget, and the architect even echoed, yes, this is a process and it makes sense. And the client was just absolutely adamant that you're wrong. Your numbers are wrong. You said that you were going to deliver this. And there was a little bit of discussion about scope growth, meaning when you get into the details, a lot of times things that haven't been accounted for come to light. It's just a part of the design process. It's part of the estimating process as you're putting a project together. It happens. And so there was this critical moment, though, in the meeting when the client looked at me after having this engagement with both, the contractor and the architect for quite a little while. Then everything got quiet because they had, both said their piece. And my client looks at me and says, well, what do you think, John? And I said, I think your team here has done a great deal of, diligence, and they have executed this estimate, well. They've proven that it is based upon current market costs. And there's no doubt that there has been scope that's not only come to light, but has been added during the course of the last couple of months, all adding cost. And so he said, well, what are you saying? And I said, I'm saying that this is over budget and we need to cut some areas back. Well, my client was furious. He didn't like that one bit. He actually accused me of working for the other team, which I don't know who the other team was, because I look at it that we were all a team for the project to do best for this client. But it kind of devolved from there a little bit. There was some more, I'm not going to say name calling, but it was just uncomfortable. And it became very clear that my client was only engaging with the contractor and the architect after that. Architect had some good ideas on how to cut a couple things scope-wise back, and we did, talked about that. But I wasn't getting eye contact. There was no engagement. This client thanked everybody at the end of the meeting, and, he thanked his staff. He thanked the contractor, and he thanked the architect for all the hard work. Wouldn't even look at me, no acknowledgement. Whatever, I don't do this for acknowledgement, but it was just an observation at the end of the meeting. Now, why didn't I get all upset and defensive? I mean, anger is kind of my go-to emotion. It has been my entire life. But why was I not upset? Why didn't I get completely defensive in that situation? Well, because I had prepared. I prepared for the meeting. I mean, this happens a lot, unfortunately, where I come to a point where I'm at odds with my client sometimes because I always speak the truth, and a lot of times the truth is something that they don't want to hear in terms of cost and scope and all of that. It's just a thing. It's a hard thing you have to work through. I'm hired so many times to kind of lean on architects or lean on contractors to get answers that don't exist, or numbers or scope that doesn't exist. Meaning, if you want more, you usually have to pay for more. But anyway, so I had prepared for this, though. I knew this was going to be a contentious meeting. I knew we were going to, go through some difficult ground, but I had great confidence in the team, in this contractor and in this architect. One, to speak the truth, but also to work as a cohesive unit to try to deliver what's going to be best for this client. And so my preparation and the biggest part of my preparation, I had notes and I had some data and I had, things like that I read and prepared, and that's preparation you want to do for any meeting. However, I think more importantly I was very prepared for kind of a blow up, for a confrontational situation. And I knew already that I was going to I'm not going to say that I took the side of the contractor. I was going to speak on behalf of what was true and what was best for the project. And that was going to be perceived by my client as being contrary to his best interests. Well, it worked out. I pulled him aside afterwards and we had a little talk and things worked out, but I had been prepared. I didn't have to get defensive. I didn't have to get angry. I didn't let myself go there because I knew and I had prepped for that. So there's another example. So just to kind of reaffirm this, okay? And I may have talked about, I had a series of projects that were all connected years ago before I started my company. And I was a young project manager. And I had, I was a contractor for the federal government, kind of sentenced to this work for a while. It was just, it was an intense time. And part of the protocol was, as a project manager, was that I had to report to an executive at the end of the day and at the beginning of every workday for my download or debrief or whatnot, his debrief. I affectionately call them motivational meetings, even though they weren't very motivational, because it consisted of me sitting at a chair, with a desk, and then in a small room with an executive leaning across, a hot, sweaty executive leaning across the desk, yelling at me so I could smell his breath, as if I couldn't hear him yelling if he sat back further, so I didn't, smell his breath. But the purpose was to, I think, put some fear in me to keep me motivated to go and not mess up and that kind of a thing. And I'll tell you, over time, a short period of time, I grew to really hate these meetings. I just, it was terrible. It was a demotivator. It was, I couldn't miss them. It was required. That's what I had. What I had to do. And there was no value to me personally or professionally. There was no value to the team. There was no way it was motivating any of us to do anything better or not mess up. It was just kind of one of those tough pill to swallow at the end of the day. Oh, and the beginning of the day too. So I chose, however, to begin to have a positive mindset and to prepare myself. I mean, it wasn't difficult to know what the strategy was, okay, on the other side of the table. It wasn't difficult for me to prepare if I wanted to, and I wanted to. So I changed that, and I started to think, okay, he's going to lean forward. He's going to bring up this, this, and this. One, I need to make sure that I'm prepared with an answer and that we're progressing in those areas. But two, I got to make sure that I'm not going to get rattled. I'm not going to get upset. I'm not going to become defensive, because that's only going to escalate the situation. It's only going to make it worse. And so I look at that kind of mental prep as just one more step in being prepared for meetings or hard conversations or negotiations, and this can not, just not with your business or with your team. This applies, with your kids, at home, with friendships as well. Preparing for the hard conversations, preparing for the difficulty, will help you. So did all of that change my perception of reality? I don't know, maybe a little bit, but I can't tell you that, that there wasn't an impact, a positive impact on the reality. If I had a crummy attitude, that would have changed the whole negotiation. It would have changed the whole motivational update. Or in my previous example with the architect and contractor, had I gotten in there and just pounded my fist and gotten angry and defensive and all that, that would have accomplished nothing for the project at all. So, and it would have added a complete different dynamic to, the balance of the conversation and the progress or lack of progress, that would have been seen at the meeting. So I believe that my positive outlook and mindset and preparation did have an impact on the reality of the results of those meetings in both cases. So consider that when you're going to do hard stuff. Here's an example. Like when it goes bad, it can go really bad, So if you choose to get defensive, if you choose to let emotions rule, it can go bad in a hurry. And so I'm gonna pick on my dad a little bit. When I was a kid, I like to, do pranks and stuff like that. And I was kind of a jokester. And I remember being pretty young. I don't know, I must have been in second grade or something like that. And we had like these little little beanbag things, and you would toss them through a hole, kind of a deal. But bean bags had tons of other uses, like throwing at your sister, or the dog would chew on them, and there's all kinds of other. And there was there was actual beans inside of them, which was pretty cool too. But on this one particular time, I remember taking, and I enlisted the help of my little sister too. She was a year younger than me, but to where we wanted to booby trap my my bedroom door. And so we took 3 of these little bean bags and a piece of string and some tape, and we stood. I remember having my sister stand on a chair to kind of guesstimate the height of my dad's face, or mom, and so we kind of determined the distance, and so we taped the strings that were tied to these bean bags up on the top of the frame of the door, and then we cracked the door open, 6, 8, 10 inches, whatever, to my bedroom, and then we set these bean bags in a row on top of the door. So if you would open the door, the bean bags would swing down, and it'd be really funny, and everybody have a good laugh. The problem with my plan was that apparently I incurred some offense out in the living room. I had done something. I was a real stinker, and got my dad a little upset at me. And so I booked it back to my room, just out of, that was my safe haven. I was going to get out of there before I got in more trouble. Well, Dad comes running down the hallway because he's going to tell me something, and he swings the door open. And I'll never forget, I see it in slow motion still to this day. It was a long time ago, but I see it in slow-mo. Those beanbags, boy, that was executed perfectly. Whack, 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 right in his face. And he was not prepared for, one, having that happen, but two, it's kind of escalated the whole situation in his defense, But it was an illustration that he wasn't prepared for what he was going to see when he opened the door there. And frankly, there was no way he could have prepared for that, honestly. But at the time, it's kind of an illustration of how we can let our emotions rule. And I'll just put it this way: the rest of that meeting didn't work out real well for me. And so just stay positive and try to train yourself to be positive. Practice, run through those scenarios before those hard conversations, and try to go through that. Like practice it in your head, beforehand. Certainly have your presentation materials, your data, any documentation, anything that you need physically, obviously, to bring, agenda, prepare your people before you have meetings. Prepare even, I think even with my kids, I like to kind of tee some stuff up. If we're going to have a hard discussion, I like to tee it up with, hey, later tonight, let's talk about this, and this, or let's do these things here, in order to try to kind of, some people call it grease the skids, whatever, but nobody likes surprises like that. Let the others prepare as well. Now, I'm sure there's some attorney somewhere that's going to tell me, well, that, that's not good legal strategy. I don't know about that. I'm not an attorney. But I am a project manager and independent owner's rep, and I've done this for years, and I understand, and I can see how by me preparing well, giving my client or others a heads up to certain things, and then preparing my mindset that can evoke positive outcomes. Years ago, there was a poster when I was a kid that was, I can still see it. It was this little bitty Chihuahua dog, and he was standing like in the median. There was a curb, and standing in the median, and next to him was this fire hydrant that must have been like 6 feet tall or something, which I don't know who in the world would, what municipality would ever allow a fire hydrant to be placed that high, but maybe it was just used for the photo op or whatever. But this dog was standing there and looking up, at the top of the fire hydrant, and at the bottom on the poster it said, "Think positive." And I always loved that because, one, it was kind of funny, but two, a lot of times the things that we see before us are huge, are bigger than we can even imagine. And while thinking positive isn't going to get us everything. It's not going to make us a doctor if we're not a doctor. It's not going to make us successful all the time in negotiations and deals. That's for sure. If you rely just upon that, that doesn't make any sense. But if we take the positive mindset, positive state of mind into our business dealings, into our personal relationships, we're going to do nothing but succeed at a greater rate than we would if we'd be grouchy or have a terrible attitude or be combative all the time. And so stay positive, train yourself to be positive, think positive, just like the little dog. And I believe that you'll have a positive impact with your team, with those that you lead, with your projects. And overall, you're going to feel better too. You know, I do. When I come out of those meetings and I'm not defensive or angry, and I had prepared well, I just feel good. It motivates me to prep more next time. It motivates me to feel better about about just having a positive influence. That helps me, and so it'll help you too. So I guarantee it. So hopefully you've heard something here today. Something positive here today that will help you make you a better leader, more effective leader, whether you're a project manager, a member of a team, or whatever your vocation or whoever you are. I hope you've heard something here today that will help you. If you have, please pass it along to others. Subscribe if you can. That helps me get my message out, and my goal and my heart's desire is just to share the lessons that I've learned to help you not make all the mistakes that I've made. So that's all I've got for now, and can't wait to talk to you next time. Thanks. Have a great day.